Good afternoon. I hope this is sharper and clearer for all of you to see. Great, super. My name is Atul Kumar. I'm delighted to be here. I think I'm the only person here from Asia today, and we're going to talk about a building in Bombay that was recently repaired and restored over the last 3 years. So the presentation structure essentially, very quickly, and I'm going to try and keep this to time, is why Swastik is important for not you, but all of us. And yeah, that's right. The property is situated within a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which brings with it a lot of responsibilities in terms of the preservation of the building and historical background, the property modern heritage, some facts and figures about the building, what's the process, the methodology we followed, etc. And of course, with the support that's provided by ICADS to all Art Deco member societies and members from across the world. So if you look at this slide, you can see all these properties, and they're all over Ireland, England, Australia, Miami. What binds all these is the fact that they were all built during the same period, and number two, we were all using RCC or reinforced cement concrete as the primary construction material. So there are learnings for all of us in terms of why this repair and restoration project was useful. It's one of the few case studies that has been actually been documented. So there's a lot of work that goes on. It remains within the repository of architectural firms or conservation architects. It's not put out there in a simple format that is accessible to people who say, I have a heritage property. I would like to know how I could make this a better property, how I could preserve its architectural integrity. And so that's the outcome of the whole documentation initiative. We talk about negotiating consensus amongst people who live in this case, a residential building. And it's also a template for site investigation and simple rules that you can follow when you attempt to repair and restore a building. And what is the philosophy of conservation that we apply to this project? The property is, you can see over here, unfortunately I don't have a pointer, but all the buildings that you see in orange are Art Deco, and this is the Victorian Gothic and Art Deco ensemble in Mumbai. And it's a huge precinct. It has 164 acres with 92 buildings, of which 76 buildings are Art Deco. We have 12 Victorian Gothic properties, neoclassical, Indo-Saracenic, one cricket stadium, and 2 bank buildings. You can see the cricket club over there, which is a very iconic property built in 1938. It's unprecedented for this inscription, which took place in 2018, to be demarcated as a World Heritage Site, because for the first time it includes 20th century modern, and it includes it in such a significant way, where 164 acres and 72 buildings have been nominated. You can see the 35 buildings which are in an arc overlooking the Arabian Sea at the bottom, and that's popularly known as Marine Drive or the Queen's Necklace, for those of you who may have read or heard about Bombay. This is a zoom in to show you exactly where the building is located. The Oval Maidan is something like akin to Central Park for people from the United States, and its location is kind of, I think, what you would call the Upper West Side. So what's the problem? And this really, in the Indian context, is a huge problem actually, because our architecture and our history is so old. We have the Humayun's tomb in Delhi, which is dates to 1569. We have the Taj Mahal, which was built in 1653. So when you start talking to people about architecture that was built in 1920 and 30, they just don't get the significance of that and seem to take it for granted. And since we have so many of them in Bombay, 980 buildings that we have now photo documented as confirmed Art Deco properties, it's kind of all over, so it's hidden in plain sight because you just take it for granted. Swastik was one of the earliest buildings that was built in Bombay in the Art Deco style. It's 85 years old, built by an Indian firm of architects. So the interesting thing is that India got its independence in 1947. This came up in the period of 32 to 35. And it is a dramatically different style from typical colonial architecture that was built during the presence of the empire. And it was built entirely by Indian architects who studied at the GG School of College of Arts in Mumbai, and many of them came to England to study at Riga. It's a ground plus 5 structure that you can see, and it's one of those rare buildings where most of the features were intact because they just never repaired it. So because nobody interfered with the property, its integrity was incredible. I would say one of the finest properties in Mumbai. The apartments inside this building typically are about 2,000 square feet each. They have 3 bedrooms, a living room, another door for help, and very spaciously laid out, extremely high ceilings, terrazzo floors, cross ventilation, capturing the sea breeze from the Arabian Sea. And really, most importantly, I think giving a quality of life to its residents, which is something that we don't get today in modern apartments. This slide is interesting because it shows you how we negotiated with all the stakeholders who were involved in this project. And this is in the apartment of a lady who lives in that building, has lived there for 78 years. We have, it's a peculiar, complicated ownership structure with an owner and then with tenants. So the tenants have protection under rent control. So there's a lot of conflict there because the owner effectively is getting 1970 rents to maintain a building in 2023. And we had to align their interests to make sure that they all agreed that if they paid out on an equal basis, what they would get would be something of value to all of them, individually as flat owners and also the landlord as the property owner. And it's not just about architecture, there are other influences like language, ethnic diversity, cultural differences, and of course socio-economic differences. Not everybody has the same access to economic funds and stuff like that, which somebody else may have. And so it was a constant process of negotiation and enabling consensus and doing that through constant informal engagement. And I must say this was a very progressive group because they came through and agreed to do everything that we recommended. And essentially, I think the most important philosophy that my team and the conservation architects followed was that since the building has never been repaired or tampered with, doing less is doing more. And everything we do should be reversible. And that was the underlying philosophy. We did a lot of documentation. People who lived in the building were able to contribute with oral histories. We had working meetings, even with the contractor. Typically, there's a big communication gap between what you want, what you tell the contractor, what he understands of that, and then what he delivers. And we found an easier way to do that in making drawings, large drawings, with colored illustrations and showing him this is what we want, this is what we said, this is what it looks like, and that really bridged the gap. So if you remember quickly run you through some images before and after. This is a fine example of less is more. As you can see, we kept the entire terrazzo flooring. We did the teakwood staircase. We kept the teakwood panel of the lift for the elevator cage. All it needed was paint, polish, touch up the marble, cladding on the side of the staircase, and it looks, it's definitely to see. This building has 5 balconies or verandas, and every single veranda had the original metal grill work intact. And the big problem in Mumbai is that most people have an enclosed veranda because they're short of space. So when you put the washing machine, let's locate it in the veranda. The kid needs a study, let's close in the veranda and put the study there. And this building is to have all the balconies intact. And you can see how we did nothing. We did not have an architect, and apologies to those who are here, who are architects. But so we basically said, we're not changing anything. The banister on the grill work is now 85 years old. It's pure teakwood from Burma. It has withstood 85 monsoons and 85 summers. We see no reason to change that and replace it with granite or with some other stone. So all it did was we kind of stripped down the grill work with some anti-rust treatment, polished banisters. And I think here what is important is that we made sure the same contractor executed all the floors. So it was not left to individual apartment owners to repair and restore, which could bring in variation in color. Some guy says, no, I don't think the teakwood is a good idea, let's get rid of it, and so forth. So this is the compound wall, so that's the boundary wall. I don't know what the word is over here, but you can see it in here, straight in the grill work, restored the pillars, brought in the speed line at the bottom of the pillar, painted, and it looks brand new. This again is the pillar, and you can see the kind of detailing at the base and also along the sides, and we put a handle for senior citizen friendly access, and then the signage on top is the word design description, which is mounted on every single property. The building entrance of the lobby had a gate, which you can see if you focus at the portion in red. So that's the one we changed, because somewhere along the years, the only intervention that had been made was to change the metal grill. And you can see how there's a disconnect in the grill on the left between the top half and the bottom half. And we created a design which was harmonious with the grill, the fixed grill at the top. And it's interesting because all the grill work in the building, whether it was in the windows, in the balconies, on the compound wall or at the entrance, has the same design. So there was a harmony in design which is aesthetically extremely appealing. And I like to think it was also, before the age of specialists. So the architect was invested in creating a living experience and not just building something that was structurally sound. This gate also is, we made design intervention so that they could get milk and they could open a small slot below and they would keep rodents out, and during COVID it was useful because it kept them safe. This is the canopy at the entrance of the building, and you can see 3 barricades over here. They're doves, and This brings me to the important point of why oral history is important. One of the residents said, in 1952, I remember there was some color over here. And this is a close-up. So you can see my colleague here gently using a specially made, water-based paint remover, and removing layers of paint. 85 years of paint was slowly washed off by her. And what came out is this rich, three-dimensional color bas-relief, which we only knew existed because one of the residents said, I remember this as a child. And I think what's amazing is that it's withstood the test of time. I mean, look at the detailing. Not a single piece is chipped, cracked, broken, impeccable condition, and it's made with something called colorcrete. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but that's basically where you mixed color with the concrete. So you could then create designs like this without having to paint over it, because the paint is mixed in the cement. And so it stays for a lifetime. This building is now, from being the most decrepit on the street, has now become the most valued address in town. And it brings me to the important point that basically it's important to create value for the people who live in any property. It's all very well to talk about heritage, but the moment you create economic value, and I think that's a conversation many of us have been having during our walks, and I know Roberta has more than one occasion compared New York and Miami, and the recognition of economic compulsions. And I think any restoration process has to acknowledge that, and that leads to successful outcomes. Essentially, that's really where I wrap up, and one has to look at alternate solutions to renegotiating your property's value, preserving and enhancing quality of life. And in this instance, this is a building in a modern historic district, so it's extremely important that its integrity was maintained. This has gone full circle, and now we've published a book which has done really well. The first edition has been sold out, and I'm sorry it's not yet shipping overseas, but we were working on fixing that. It's a 200-page book, and it's full of pictures, some of which you've seen here, and also tells you about the process that we follow in repairing and restoring this. And I think I'd like to just end with one really surprising number. This building was repaired from outside. The roof was waterproofed. All the balconies were done. It was painted. And you've seen the amount of detailing. This entire project was completed at a cost of $200,000. That's it. So it just goes to prove the point, A, less is more, and B, when you can repair and restore, don't break and rebuild. I'd like to end with the preservation support that's offered by ICADS. So if you go to our website, you will find the section on preservation and conservation. The link is posted on the right to here, ICADS.org. And if you fill out this form pertaining to any property that you think deserves special attention, even if you're not sure about it, please fill it out, send us as many details as you can. We do have a preservation committee, and they will look at it and respond to you. So that's an amazing resource that's available to all of you. If you want to know more, please go to artdecomobile.com or just type Art Deco Mobile Google and you'll be there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.